All right, so I want to welcome everybody to today's, this is February, our Lunch and Learn. We're going to talk about understanding the parent and employment team roles today. We are recording this session. Just trying to, as a parent, you do everything for your kid, for your children. And just when they get into this employment stage, just who does what and what are our different roles. So we have some speakers today. I'll let them introduce themselves. But I think today's session, it should be a very important. So you just know when your child gets to the employment stage of life, what do you do as a parent and who does what? So I'll turn it over to Angela Dean from Warren County Board of DD and let her start it off.
Sure. I'm Angela. I am the employment manager with Warren County Board of DD. I've worked with the transition team and community employment team for about 9 years. And before that, I partnered with OOD as a vocational rehab coordinator.
Oh, I'll go. My name's Kristen Pennybacker. I am the job developer for Warren County Board of DD. I didn't have any background in this, so I was very new coming into it. I've learned a lot though. And I've been with the agency for 2.5 years now.
Hi, I'm Jill Rasnic, and I'm a job coach with Warren County Board of DD. And I've been doing this for about 9 years now.
So, okay, well, thanks for coming today. I always appreciate the opportunity to be able to chat and learn from others, but we wanted to share a little bit from our perspective. So as an employment provider, our goal is to not only assist transition age youth and adults with obtaining competitive and independent employment, but also assisting them with gaining other skills such as advocacy skills and the ability to communicate effectively in the workplace and hopefully beyond. So today, Kristen and Jill are here to speak about their roles, as Patty had said, in helping ease young adults into the workplace, while also easing concerns that family members may have as they transition through the process. So everyone here, I think, is probably well aware that parents and family members can have concerns as students leave school and gain more independence, and moving into a workplace can be a little scary at times. So Jill and Kristen will talk about their process, and hopefully we can have some good conversation.
Okay, so I want to start off by saying, like, at first, when somebody comes into job development, we always start with an intake meeting, which I'm sure you all know. And this is where I usually am able to go in and explain to the parents and the individual what my role is, as well as like what they can expect through the entire process of job development, and then what I also would expect from them. This is usually when I like to dive into reassuring the parents that, they're in good hands, and that usually they don't need to attend weekly meetings. Like after this meeting, I like to just do one-on-one with the individual and myself. Since they are going into community, employment, and they're going to be out there eventually on their own, I like to start by, at the very beginning, building their confidence and their trust with me. So usually the parents are okay with that, but sometimes they are a little weird, like not weird, but a little nervous about letting their child go out and just be alone. So I like, if the child is okay, I do leave open line of communication. So that means I'll text them after every meeting. I will call them after every meeting, or email, let them know that, what we did that day, what they can expect to do. And sometimes they like to be involved. So I'll send over things especially after the mock interview, hey, here's some great mock interview questions. You could really help them by working with them, on everything. Let's see. I do feel like when the parent does allow just me and the individual to work together, it builds their confidence. And it also makes them feel really comfortable with me when it's time to go out and like start interviewing, start meeting employers, introducing themselves. They don't have, their parent with them at every meeting. So they really do open up a lot better as well to me. Trying to read what I have. And yeah, I mean, really, if parents ever have any concerns, or I mean, sometimes even kids want their parents to be involved, and that's fine. But it is nice when they understand like your child's getting ready to go out in the community on their own, and I want to help them build the confidence that they need to be out there to succeed and be successful all around. Usually they're okay with this. Sometimes they're a little bit on edge, but I do try and keep open lines of communication with everybody. And so everybody feels comfortable, and yeah. Jill?
Okay. After Kristen does everything that she does, then I get to be with the individual, and I communicate with the individual and the parent if the parent wants to be involved. I explain my role as a job coach. I like to explain the fading process from the get-go, because that seems to be what everybody gets nervous about, if they're going to be nervous. I just let them know that my primary mode of communication will be with the individual, but I will fill the parents in things that may need to be worked on, problems, concerns that we're dealing with, just so they can stay in the loop. But I make sure they know that the responsibility falls on the individual to carry out the expectations. With the fading process, I let them know that it doesn't mean I'm just leaving them out there by themselves. We like to start the fading process as soon as we can, but it just starts in small increments. It could be just 10 minutes, 15 minutes, and that will increase as levels of independence and confidence increase. They also are told that they will not be left at all until, they are independent on their job and they're confident and comfortable. So, and I also reassure the parents, letting them know that as job coaches, we also go in and lay the groundwork with setting up natural supports on day one. And they're usually very reassured by this. This involves coworkers, managers, whoever we can get involved, and as many people in the business that we can get involved in it. That way, there's always somebody around. The individual knows exactly who to go to for questions or problems when they arise if the job coach isn't with them. And they learn to do this while we're there as well, just to get in the habit of doing it and practice it. So let's see, what else do I have here?
Jill, you're muted. You're muted.
Sorry, I don't know how
Been
that
muted
happened.
for a few seconds.
Oh, what's the last thing you heard?
You were checking your notes.
Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I have an example of a parent who had an extremely hard time with their child getting into the work field, and really, really didn't want them to be out there without a job coach. One of the concerns with their child was a medical condition. So, and the mom wanted to be very, very involved. She wanted an open line of communication with the employers and managers. And so I was able to talk her out of this and keep her just let her realize that I have a good rapport built with them, and employers would rather not deal directly with parents. And, you know, we're, as a business and an agency, we're already in there. We already have the rapport made, and they don't want to be dealing with a whole bunch of people. They don't have the time for that. So I was able to just be that liaison between her and the employer and the individual. And I kept an open line of communication, and just reassured her along the way, let her know exactly how we were dealing with it at work, the accommodations that were set up, the employer, the managers, the coworkers that were involved. And she was able to relax some, and the individual was able to work there. It was very successful, and it was just good all the way around. She was an asset to the company, and it ended up being a really, really positive experience. So that's all I have.
Jill, there's a question in the comment box. Are most companies receptive to having a job coach on site?
Most, yes. I think we've had a few that we're not comfortable with it, but sometimes it's rare, but there are times where we can coach from the outside via phone calls. And Kristen might know a little bit more about that, since that hasn't really happened to me, but I've heard of other job coaches that had to coach the individual, just check in from time to time, be available for phone calls or anything during their work. So Kristen, has that happened with?
Yeah, we had, especially during COVID, some companies don't want extra people to come in, and it's a lot of medical places. And if that happens, I mean, we don't love the idea that we can't have a coach. It just depends on the individual that we're serving, and how much they would, I guess, benefit from coaching. So, you know, I have one example where the guy that I placed, he needed a coach, and they refused to let a coach come in. And unfortunately, it didn't work out in the end, because he really needed the hands-on and the extra attention, and he did really well, you know, at other places with the coach. So we knew that he needed it. Some people don't need the coaches all the time, and it's fine. But yeah, it does stink when we can't get a coach in there, when we know that, you know, they have potential to be extremely successful and a really good employee if they could just get the extra time with a coach.
Do you find, Kristen and Jill, that once, even if there's some hesitation on an employer's part, once they have a better understanding of what job coaching entails, and they start to get to know the coach and how they're working with the individual, that they start to view that as an asset to have within during that training period?
Yeah, I think it relieves some of the, I mean, Jill, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but it relieves some of the stress, because they don't have to stand over the person and train them themselves. You know, it's kind of like they train the coach then trains the person, and then they don't have to really worry about them too terribly much. And it kind of cleans their hands of, you know, having to worry about it for at least a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Sometimes we get into a situation where the employer doesn't want us to leave. So and we have to deal with that a different way. But yeah, they usually become comfortable. The job coaches are all trained we know how to stay out of the way in busy places, tight quarters, and to not step on anybody's toes. But they usually like us there. Definitely.
Are there any other questions, or are there any other, I see a couple familiar names, any other providers in here that might have some examples or tips and tricks that they use when helping ease the fears and make that transition from school into the workplace.
I think as a parent, while we're waiting for, I mean, anyone who has a question or a comment, you can just raise your hand to, you know, also use a reaction button if you don't want to type. But as a parent, it's like trying to figure out when I step in and when I don't. You know, so like they're on the job, you know, sometimes your child, especially as they get older, they have a job, they're comfortable, and they're like, I got it, mom, right? And then maybe another job offer comes up or a job change in that company, you know, a move to a different area. Do you look for the individual to contact you? Do you try to encourage them, or is that something the parent should step in and say, hey, he's interested in this other position, or hey, there's a change or an offer being made?
So what I've seen, and I won't speak for the other two, but as I've seen times where Kristen and Jill both have stepped in and assisted with the transition. I do think that just through conversations that we've had, the employer is more comfortable working with the provider than the parent. Kristen and Jill.
You were asking, sorry, Kristen, go ahead.
I don't think I've had anyone that's moved from one, you know, are you talking like kind of like a moving, you know, going from one extreme to the next, and they may need help on that?
If they move to another position and needing help, so like, let's just say they work in a retail setting and they're a stalker, and maybe they get to move to cashier, you know.
Yeah. And that usually would come in if they're having if the employer can't train them and don't feel comfortable and doesn't, you know, feel comfortable, I guess, or they just need extra help, the employer usually would get a hold of myself or the coach, depending on who they feel comfortable talking to or what contact they have. And we can actually request, I guess, is it extra coaching for them to come in and help them. And but usually when somebody's going to be getting moved, the employer does feel pretty comfortable moving that person and knows that they have the capability to do that position and can train them. But I wouldn't say like a parent would need to come in or anything like that. I would let OOD get another job coach in there if the child needs help and is nervous or something.
Yeah, I was just curious, like the parent role in that, like having the individual reach out to their job coach, or, you know, who would they reach out saying, hey, I might need some support here? Or is that something you would look for the parent to do?
I always prefer, I'm sorry, Patty.
Oh, just in the sense of reaching out, you know, not so much as the parent being there, but just reaching out and getting the things rolling in the right direction.
Yes, I always prefer that the individual is independent as possible. So those responsibilities that need to go with the individual. So, but I have had it to where a parent has reached out and said that they're talking about this and that at home. Have they mentioned it to you? Sometimes they have, sometimes they haven't. There's been a lot of times that there's been roles change within wherever they're working, the workplace. If it happens where the parent brings it up to me, I would just have a talk with the individual about advocating for themselves, that they need to learn to do this as soon as possible. And then I talk to them. If they want to go talk to the employer about this, I have them go to the employer. I go with them. And usually I'll ask them what they are going to say. And sometimes if they have trouble knowing what to say, how to ask, we'll go over that too before we go and talk to the employer, but I always put it in the hands of the individual.
And I have seen where employers will add tasks on that wasn't like told to, you know, me or the individual, like, you know, or it wasn't in the job description, and then they like to add tasks on, and that does stress some parents out, because especially if it's like they have to move heavy boxes and that wasn't in their description, or they have to go outside to take the trash out and that wasn't in the description, and the parents don't feel comfortable them, going outside by themselves. So that's usually, if I catch it before, the job coach starts, that's a conversation I have with the employer, to make sure that we're all on the same page, and I can reassure the parent, what's going to be happening. And then the job coach and I will have a long conversation about, why the parents feel one way, and if the individual can do it, and if they have to. And that's happened a few times.
All right, does anyone else have any questions or any examples of how they've helped with the transition process that might be unique?
I know there's a couple parents on here. Is there any questions, parents, that you have regarding the roles in this transition process? Going to the job, being on a job, who does what? Feel free to jump on. I think, as you mentioned, Kristen, one of the things, we've had challenges with at the job too, is that, the individual is hired for one job, let's say, just stocking a certain area. And then all of a sudden you find, like you said, they're out gathering carts or out doing something else, which you weren't totally, didn't realize. And then they suddenly come home and said, oh, I was cold tonight. I didn't take a coat because I had to go out and get carts, and stuff like that. Kind of puts an alarm or an alert for the parent as to, hey, what do I do? So our first instinct is to go to the supervisor.
Employer, yeah.
So I would say their first instinct should go to the job coach, correct?
Yes. Yep.
I see a question in the box. If the parent learns of a job that sounds like a good fit for the individual, should they contact OOD? Did I interrupt you? I am so sorry. I saw the question and I got all excited.
I don't think so.
Okay.
So-
Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
I would recommend, it depends if they are already working with OOD. So if they're working with a job developer, Kristen, I heard you say, hey, this parent has sent me these leads, I'm going to check it out. So I feel like that's always appreciated. But if they are not currently enrolled, I think it's probably a good place to start if your child needs that additional support of a job developer and a job coach.
Would you say that the parent, like, if they haven't been working with OOD, just go to their SSA or their transition coordinator with the county board, start with them and say, hey, this job looks like a good fit, and then work with them to get things rolling or look into that?
I think that is a good option. I know in Warren County, that's where I see a lot of referrals come from that go to OOD, come from the transition coordinator or the assigned SSA. Some parents, they feel comfortable enough going straight to OOD. So I guess it really just depends on your knowledge and comfort level of navigating the system, which can at times be complex.
And for those who don't know who OOD is, that's the Opportunities for Ohioans with Disabilities. I'll look up the contact here and I can put it in the chat box unless someone else has it readily available. And just another question too, some parents, we work on the transition, the 18 and 19 and 20. So now what happens when they're like in the job for a while, they've been in there, they're 25, 26, 27. So can you explain to what happens when your child gets a little older or, comes out of that transition stage and maybe they're still at the same job or maybe they want to change jobs? Like where would you guys fit in? Like DD versus, would they contact their transition coordinator then, or would they go to the OOD side?
I see a lot of parents contacting, or the individual, if they're doing that on their own, contacting their SSA at that point to kind of have that conversation about, like, hey, I'm looking for more. Where do we start? And they can, depending on that particular situation, there's a couple different avenues that could be explored that the SSA can help with. So, or if there's an employment navigator, depending on what county you're with, it might be if they have an IES provider, someone that's doing follow along and stopping in, they might be able to help just initiate that conversation if they want to move around within that company. But if they're looking to, you know, kind of take the plunge and get out there and find something different, then that might be a great time to get in touch with OOD through your SSA, having those conversations and having them help you with the referral. Is that what you were asking, Patty?
Yeah.
Okay.
And then, you know, just your child, just so you know, I mean, we have a lot of it with IOD or DD, but your child can be any age to reopen a case or, you know, get involved. I mean, we've had some, I've had some contact with families who their child is turning 40 or 50, or, I mean, they're getting up there in years, and it's like, you know, they're looking for maybe a small job, maybe something part-time. So.
And another thing with that, I think, is kind of exciting about OOD services is it isn't, sometimes people ask, how many times can I apply for services for support through them? And there's no set amount. It might be that your situation has changed and they'll have those conversations at OOD with you, but it's nice to know that you can go back and reapply for services if your situation changes in the future.
And then I'm also putting in here, and correct me if I'm wrong, but most counties have a specific representative assigned to that county.
Yes, we have a couple. And then each county probably has a general counselor and a transition counselor. So one that's specializing in transition age youth, and then one that works more with adults. And what's nice is they communicate a lot back and forth. So
does anybody else have any concerns or questions or any comments or experiences, you know, that maybe they can present to or ask to the group that's here today about your role or employment? Any situations that came up and how you handled them? Everybody's quiet today. So, but yeah, employment was a challenge for those who are parents. It is a step of, you have to have a team you trust. You know, there's trust involved, taking that step of your child leaving home, in the step of going out and being under someone else or working with somebody else is a challenge. But there is a team, you know, and that's what we want to make sure parents are aware of. There is a team to work with during this stage of that stage of transition to employment. Do you guys have anything else to add? Any last minute comments before we close?
no, just thank you for coming today. Appreciate it. Thanks for having us.
Yeah, thank you all for joining us. It is a short session. It is only 30 minutes, but it's just trying to touch on, you know, just topics that, you know, are just concerns for, you know, parents, or how to, you know, handle certain transition situations. Next month, we are going to be speaking with Luke 5 Adventures. I kind of shifted gears for next month. Just it's a recreational group, fun, you know, things, and they're specialized with the disability, you know, group and disabilities in general. And they do fun things, hiking. I mean, I don't know if Angela or if you know anything about them, but they do fun things like hiking and just fun recreational activities that your child can get out and be able to experience and interact with others socially with others. So watch for that information. You can always find our information also, our updates on our SALT Google Drive or in the live binder. And I'll go ahead and post those links right now. And if you ever have any questions, you can reach out to me. And if you have any questions following this session, feel free to, well, you can email me and I can forward your question to any of the speakers. So I want to thank you all for attending and have a good afternoon.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.